Hello and welcome. I am Jamey from Stonemaier Games, and I'm here as usual to talk about my top games in a certain category. And I'm joined today by a special guest, Karel, who I've had the pleasure of working with on quite a few Rolling Realms products over the last couple of years. So we might talk about that a little bit today, but for the most part, today we're going to be talking about each of our top 5 favorite multiplayer games that also play well solo. Karel, can you introduce yourself and let people know why you were interested in this particular topic?
Yeah, well, my name is Karel Titeca, and I am involved in both working on stuff at Automa Factory as for Stonemaier games. So I'm a developer for many Rolling Realms and for the upcoming Redux box. And I have been involved in many solo modes for Automa Factory as well. I started playtesting a couple of years ago, and then I joined the team. But I enjoy both multiplayer games as solo games. I enjoy solo games really as a puzzle where I can take 10 minutes to think about a turn, and it's really another way of playing, and I enjoy that very much. And I have a passion about solo games, and I'd like to share some of that passion here today.
Well, I am really, really curious and excited to hear what you talk about today. For people who have watched this channel before, you probably know that I almost only talk about playing games with other players. I don't play many games solo. So my list is very short. I don't have many details to share, but I did think of a few games that apply to this category for me. Karel has a lot more experience with it, and so I can't wait to hear what he has to say. Do we want to start out with some honorable mentions, just some brief mentions of game that didn't quite make your top 5?
Yeah. Well, because a top 5 was really short for me. So where you say that your list is short by nature, my list is actually very long. And every year I make a top 20 of my favorite solo games because there is the One Player Guild on Board Game Geek. It's a really lovely place to be, and every year they do a People Choices Top 200 awards of the best solo games. I think Spirit Island and Mage Knight are every year are the top games over there, and so I also participate in that. So I submit my top 20. Now I did adapt my top 5 of that list a bit because I focused on games that are playable multiplayer. Some of my games in my top are playable only solo. So for today, I focused on games that are playable multiplayer. And also I took a little rule that you apply. I didn't put any Stonemaier games in my top 5 because for me, actually all Stonemaier games are an honorable mention here because I know this is the goal, but it, and obviously I'm biased being involved in Automa Factory, but I think all Stonemaier games do a great job of being a good mix of both multiplayer, very enjoyable, as solo. So there are quite a few Stonemaier games I enjoy a lot. I think if I have to pick some, the number 1 on my list every year would be Tapestry. So I think you know that game. So that has often been the number 1 on my list. But I enjoy a lot of other games too. Expeditions Apiary recently, and there is a little roll and write game you may know. It's called Rolling Realms. Yeah, I think I have over 300 plays of that by now. Other honorable mentions, so apart from all Stonemaier games, are Obsession. It just didn't make my top 5. It's an excellent game and also excellent solo, but I only could pick 5. Then Imperium Classics or Imperium Legends. I think it's a great solo game, but I didn't put it in my top 5 because I think it really shines solo. It's a great solo game, and I don't enjoy it as much multiplayer actually. Another honorable mention would certainly be Great Western Trail. But I'm a big Alexander Pfister fan, and so another game might pop up in my list. Same goes for Uwe Rosenberg. So I have Atiwa here as a honorable mention, but maybe another Uwe Rosenberg game will pop up as well. And then the games from Flatout Games. So I have the latest expansion for Cascadia here, but actually Cascadia, Calico, Verdant, they are all great games, both multiplayer as solo. And then my second to last honorable mention would be campaign games as a whole. I have here, it's still in the shrink wrap, but I have here the new expansion for role player adventures. But I think, Sleeping Gods, role player adventures, all kinds of adventure games go into this category. I didn't put them in my top 5 because while I think they are great solo, I think arguably they are better played with other people because you enjoy the quest, you enjoy going on the quest together. And the last one for my honorable mentions would be roll and write games or flip and write games as a whole. So I have Welcome 2 here, but these are infinitely scalable, just as Rolling Realms is, and so they are both fun, both solo as multiplayer. So that's for my long list of honorable mentions.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. I didn't want to interrupt. I do have some thoughts to share on that, but I love the different categories you mentioned, and the different games you mentioned. I'm taking notes over here. A few quick thoughts about that. One, for campaign games, I'm sure we're gonna share some various reasons why you might play games solo, why you might play multiplayer games solo as we talk today. I think campaign games are a wonderful example of that. As you said, they're often the experience is often enhanced by playing with other people, but of all the games that we try to play, campaign games are probably the hardest to get a regular group together. I found that I primarily play campaign games now only with Megan, only with my partner, because it's much easier for us to casually decide, okay, we'll play one now, and maybe we will go a week without playing it or a month without playing it, and then we'll play it again. Whereas coordinating that with multiple people is much more difficult. So if I was only playing those solo, it would be even easier for me to play them whenever I want. So I think that's a great asset. I'll pause here in case you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, the only thing I want to add is that for that exact reason, I played the Rise of Fenris campaign solo. So I often play side with friends, but I couldn't find a group who would want to engage in playing 12 games of side. So I did the Rise of Fenris campaign solo, and I really enjoyed it. So that's good.
That is good. That is very good. I'm glad to hear that. And I think the Rise of Fenris is only 8 games. Charterstone is 12.
It's been a while. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Eight, yeah, indeed. Yeah.
Still a big commitment for a longer game.
Yeah.
You mentioned there was something else that you mentioned that I think I've already forgotten, but you also mentioned Stonemaier games. And just to let people know who are watching this, who might wonder about the process, very briefly, I am in charge of the game design and or development of the multiplayer functionality and gameplay of all Stonemaier games. And Automa Factory is in charge of the solo elements of those games. So it's 2 separate processes where I'll work on a game until I think it's ready for Automa. I'm essentially confident that no big significant changes are going to happen in the game. And then I hand it off to the Automa Factory and they work on the solo mode. And so there are 2. Karel was saying that he was happy with how our games play multiplayer and solo. And I think part of that is because they're designed for both purposes in completely separate processes in that way. Multiplayer separate from solo. But also for that reason, people often ask me why I know so little about the solo versions of our games. And that's because I mostly play the multiplayer. And I trust Automa Factory to deliver a great solo experience. And they consistently have based on the feedback that I've heard from the community. So. Yeah. So I wanted to mention that process real quick. I forgot one other thing I wanted to throw in there, but it'll come back to me later on. For my brief honorable mentions, I have the game Destinies, which is a semi-campaign game, but it's more scenario-based game, where it is a rare game in that style that is competitive instead of cooperative. And so I dabbled a little bit in the solo play of it because I played it competitively with Megan, and it felt a little odd. Like I wanted to be cooperatively playing with her, but it was a competitive game. And so I gave it a try solo cooperative in the exploration mode instead and enjoyed it. This one's a little bit of a cheat, but I recently played the solo trick-taking game for Northwood. Have you played that one? Yeah.
Yeah.
And it is a solo game. Actually, and this reminds me of what I was going to say earlier. This is very much a solo game. But as I was playing it, I was like, oh, this would also I could also play this solo game with Megan cooperatively, and I think we would have fun. I wouldn't necessarily say that about all solo games, but that is a possibility in this game. And the thing I had forgotten to say before was that one of the focuses of this list today, as you mentioned, are games that not only play solo and not only play multiplayer, but that we probably would play them either way. That we're happy to play them solo. We're also happy to play them multiplayer, opposed to multiplayer games that you would only ever play solo. So I'm glad you made that distinction earlier.
Yeah. I think you played, if I remember correctly, you played Under Falling Skies with Megan too, multiplayer. It's also a solo only game, or it may be on your list, maybe.
That one is on my
okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. We'll talk about that one in a little bit.
Yeah, okay.
And
great.
then for Stonemaier games, I did break my rule for one particular game on this list that will come up later. But I also wanted to mention that the Stonemaier game that I have used the solo mode for is Viticulture. I have played the Viticulture solo mode. I would say it's probably up there among the simpler solo modes that we have in our games. And that was very appealing to me because I just wanted to jump in and give it a try to see what this Automa Factory was all about in the early days, and I had a lot of fun with it. It could have made my top 5, but I didn't want 2 Stonemaier games to be on my list.
Yeah, some of the Automa solo modes may be daunting. I think Sight is one of the most well-known ones of one that is quite hard to handle because of the movement on the map. But there are actually quite a few of the solo modes that are very quick and very easy and very simple. So I may recommend Red Rising 2 as a solo mode where an automa turn takes literally 5 seconds or so. So you do what the automa does, and then you continue playing your own turn. So I enjoy that.
That's much faster than a human player. So
Indeed. So you can fully focus on your own card play and your own game. Yeah,
that's cool. Well, let's jump into our top 5. Why don't you tell me about your number 5 pick, and I will start sharing some photos on the screen of the game that you pick. I don't know, I don't know what Karel has picked here today. I will be just as surprised by you watching this.
Yeah. Well, the contender for my number 5 was Obsession, but I ultimately ended up with bringing Glen More Chronicles to the top 5. So it is my number 5 game because it is it's quite an achievement what Automa Factory did there. So I wasn't involved in that project. So that's one of the games that is not from Stonemaier, but where Automa Factory did the solo mode. And for people who don't know Glen More Chronicles, it is a game, so it is based on Glen More. There was first the game Glen More, but Glen More Chronicles, the Chronicles in the name is about the fact that there are, how many is it? I think with the expansion, there are 11 or 12 Chronicles, which are actually mini expansions that alter the game. So you have a base game that is very good, and then you have these 10 or 11 mini expansions, the Chronicles, and you can add them to the game, and you can add any number in any order, in any combination. And so that is already quite a feat of Michael Kramer and the other authors at Funtails to achieve that. But it's also a an enormous feat from Automa Factory to handle all those combinations and all those chronicles. Well, they aren't all compatible, but most are, to handle that solo. And so I think it was an enormous job. I think Morten and David and Linus didn't know what they were going into when they agreed to do that, but they really did a splendid job. It's a hard solo mode. It's really hard to beat the Automa over there, but it's really great, and it's a great way to play a great game solo.
And I can speak from the multiplayer perspective. This has long been one of my favorite multiplayer games. It is a delight to play, even without adding any of the chronicles. Just the standard mode of the game. It's a one of these games where you're selecting a tile anywhere on the path ahead of you that you have available. This looks like a digital image here, but and if you're the meeple in the back, then you are the current player to choose. And it flows really well. And as you're adding those tiles to your tableau, you're not only activating the ability on that tile, but the tiles around it. So it's a really satisfying engine that you're activating turn after turn after turn.
Yeah,
it's a lovely game to play multiplayer.
Yeah.
So that is Glen More II Chronicles as your number 5 pick. My number 5 pick is another one that both of us have a strong connection to personally, and that is the new game. Actually, I might let you pronounce it here. I say Skoventyr. What is the correct way to pronounce it? Do you know?
Yeah, it's Skoventyr. And that's also not correct, but I'm learning Danish a bit, and so it's Skoventyr.
I will probably. I could probably say it if I repeated it time after time. In my head, I'll probably just have to keep saying Skoventyr. But this is from our friend and colleague Morten Monrad Peterson, who started Automa Factory. He designed this solo co-op game, and so I'm kind of using this game both because I adore Morten. I adore this game. This is one of the games that I have here at the table with me, but also because I think it represents. We might actually see a photo of Morten here. It represents the whole category of solo co-op games. So cooperative games that don't necessarily rely on other players for you to have an experience of solving a puzzle to defeat something. In this case, what is his name? Eric?
Yeah, Gammel Eric. Yeah.
Gammel Eric.
Yeah. Old Eric. Yeah.
Old Eric. So yeah, he is kind of the bad force here, and he has some goons, some henchmen, some evil spirits that he is pitting against you in this very puzzly game that I have played with 2 other players, and it works great as a multiplayer puzzle that we were solving together. But I think it also works well as a solo puzzle that you're solving by yourself.
Well, I agree that it works great as a solo puzzle, and that's actually the reason that it didn't make my list. So, spoiler, it didn't make my list. It should have made my honorable mention, so I should have mentioned it. But I really love the game. I really love what Morten did. I also extensively playtested it. And I actually love all the games. Yeah, that's Morten's cat. I actually love all games that are put out by Impatient, so by Morten's publisher over there. So the Onirim series are very much alike. So it is a different game. Morten has his own game, but they do feel a bit like the other games from Impatient. So yeah, this is Onirim indeed. And I love all those games. I love the whole series, but I think it's the same as I said for Imperium Classics. They shine, for me personally, they shine at solo. So that's why I didn't include them in this list. But they are super great games, and Skoventyr is too.
Yeah, I think when I think of Onirim and that series of games, I mostly view them as solo only games, even though they could be played with other people.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's Skoventyr at number 5 on my list.
Yeah. Thank you for including that.
Of course. What is your number 4 pick?
Yeah, my number 4 is Concordia. by Mike Gertz. It's becoming a classic. It's quite high in the Board Game Geek top 100. And what I love about it is that, like it was the case for some Stonemaier games, like Euphoria and Between Two Castles, that got a solo mode later on. So after publication, this also was a multiplayer game until I think 2 or 3 years ago. Mac added the Solitaria expansion, so which is actually a automa. So it is a bot opponent which you play against, and I don't know if the author has much experience with solo games, but he did a great job. I talked to him at Essen Spiel the year when it was released, and so he designed it by himself, and he really did a great job. So it really feels like an opponent who you're playing against, and the game is about it's a bit area control, and you're trying to build to send your what are they called? Yeah, your ships and your, I forgot the name. The soldiers. It's not soldiers, but you're trying to send them over the map, and it's a bit of area control and resource control, and I really love it. It's a quite dry Euro, so it has a rich theme. It's set in the Roman theme, but it is the mechanics of the game are a quite dry Euro, but it is really great, and I love what it did with the solo mode. I also love that the game is very easy expandable with different maps, so you have these different maps that you can add to the game, and I also love that.
I'm glad you mentioned this. I'm working on revisiting my positive player interaction games, and this game has a wonderful form of positive player interaction where you activate a region to generate resources region, but anyone who has presence in that region benefit from that, and then you can also refresh it so that you can have the opportunity to collect income again. So there's a lot of even though we're not even really blocking other players on the board. You might grab some spots that someone else wants, but there's a lot of good things that can come from sharing the same area as other players.
Yeah, and I also love that you get to copy. You have one card that copies the last card that another player played. So you're waiting for the other player to play, for example, his prefect, and then you jump in and you play your card. So yeah, I love that.
Anyone who's played Expeditions and maybe hasn't heard of Concordia, I'd highly recommend checking out Concordia, because they use a somewhat similar action selection system using these cards in hand. Yeah, Concordia number 4. I love that pick. I'm happy to hear that it plays solo, just as well solo as it does multiplayer.
Yeah, it does.
My pick for number 4 is Size Game, which I'm going to pull it up over here. I actually was, in my mind, I pictured it as, yeah, you're right. It's a one-player game on here, but I played it 2 players and kind of assumed in my head that this was a game that was designed to play with more than one player, because that's how I played it. I played this with my friend Henry, where we just sat on opposite sides of the table like any other 2-player game, but we were working together to solve this problem of alien invaders crashing towards Earth and placing dice on this board to prevent that from happening. It really, I can totally see why this game would excel at solo play, but we had a great time playing it as 2 players. Let's see. There we go. Here's a photo of what the game actually looks like. It looks like the Space Invaders game, these ships dropping towards you and you're placing dice to block them. Yeah. So yeah, I guess this is a bit of a cheat here because it technically is a solo game, but I really enjoyed it too.
Yeah.
And it won.
Yeah. For people who visit Spiel in Essen and who want to try the game, I don't know if they will bring it every year, but it's already a couple of years that Czech Games Edition, the publisher of this game, brings a giant version of this game, so with
Oh,
ships
cool.
like this and so on. It's really really cool, but it takes up a lot of space on their booth, of course. But it's really great to see the giant game of this.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Well, yeah, Under Falling Skies as my somewhat cheater pick, but yeah, I'm going to stick with it because I really do think it plays well at 2, but also is designed to play at solo play.
Yeah.
What is your number 3 pick?
My number 3, I had been in doubt a bit if I would include it because it's also, it's not a cheat, but it's one exception to the rest of my list. I'll first show the game. It's Oranienburger Kanal from Uwe Rosenberg, and it's one of the harder to get games. It's published by Spielworks, and they did a Kickstarter for it, but it was a really small amount of games that they printed, and it has been very very well received. I personally think it's one of Uwe's best games, and that says a lot. That says a lot because I really enjoy many of his games. But it is printed in a very limited supply. It's very hard to get, but the good news is that another publisher has jumped in and it will be republished sometime next year, I think, as just plain Kanal. So the hard to pronounce German name Oranienburger Kanal will be replaced by just Kanal. And it is a 2-player game. It's a 1 or 2-player game, so you can't play it at higher player count. So that's maybe also a bit atypical for Uwe Rosenberg. But it's really it's a brain burner. It's a really hard game to get everything right. There is a lot of text and a lot of symbols on the cards, but I really love it. It's you're building your own. It's not actually a city, but your industry. You're building roads and canals and railroads, and you have very limited turns. You have very limited possibilities, and you try to make the best out of the limited time you have, and it's so great, both at 2 players as solo. Now, the reason I said it is an exception to my list is because, like most other Uwe Rosenberg games, it is good solo, but it is a beat your own score solo mode. So there are different solo modes, and what Automa Factory puts out are artificial opponents. So where you play a game against a deck of cards, but they will have a score at the end of the game, and you will compare your score to theirs, and either they will win or you will win. Uwe Rosenberg's games are great for solo, but the only criticism I have, and I know Morten has them too, I know Morten likes Uwe's games too, but they are beat your own score games. So you play not against an opponent, but you have some actions that happen that make your turns a bit difficult and more puzzly, and you try to work around that, but at the end of the game you just have a score, and you have a table in the rulebook that says how well you did. So I like an artificial opponent. I like being beat by an opponent or to beat an opponent, but this game is just so good that it had to make my top 5.
That's awesome. I'm glad you brought it to light today, because I think a lot of people, including myself, I can vaguely remember seeing the game, but it came and went so quickly, and it sounds like I missed out. So I'm looking forward to seeing the Canal version of the game.
Yeah. You should.
Yeah. My pick at number 3 is one that I told a story about on the channel a few months ago, where I was actually at a social gathering, and I was feeling a little overwhelmed by all the little kids running around at this gathering, just wanted a little bit of a break. And someone suggested that I go up to a quiet room and play a solo game, or play a game solo that they had brought. And that game is Escape the Dark Castle. And I took them up on it, and I was really glad that I did. Like, it wasn't something I would normally do at a party, at a gathering with friends, where people were in different rooms playing games. to go off on my own and play a game, but it was really nice just to kind of be around people, be near people, but enjoy this solo experience by myself. This is another solo co-op game. Plays, I believe, up to 4 players normally, 1 to 4. Even says best 3 to 4 here, but I had a great time playing this game solo. It is a game where you are essentially, it's very easy to set up and play. You just flip over a card and begin playing. There's a little bit of shuffling. You'll shuffle the cards together and shuffle some monsters in. But you pretty much just shuffle the deck of cards and you reveal a card and you have to deal with whatever that card says. You can kind of see them here. Like this one says, you hear a scream from behind and turn around and try to avoid the clutches of a lurching ghoul. As a group, choose one option. And so it says as a group, but if you're playing solo, you just choose yourself. You can flee, you can fight, and there's some dice rolling that happen as a result of this. I think the game does a good job of scaling by player count. There's different characters that you can play as. Scaling happens dependent on like how many results of certain numbers that you need or certain icons that you need when you're trying to get past these tests. But it's a game that it's one of the few games on this list that I haven't played multiplayer at all, but I could see this working just fine and being fun with more than one person. But I also just had a lot of fun playing it by myself. It was a reminder, and I'm curious to hear what you think about this, but it was a little reminder to me that when I am playing a game solo, especially a cooperative game where I'm going up against something antagonistic pretty consistently in this game, that when I'm playing solo, I'm slightly more likely to, I don't want to, but kind of cheat a little bit every now and then. Like if something really bad happens, I don't have experience. I'm fine with that. But have you found that at all when you play games, this type of game solo?
Well, solo, it's an interesting thing you bring up because I see that more cooperatively when I'm playing a game, for example, with my son, where we're just chilling for the experience, and then we draw a card, and that card is really, really bad. We often, when we play with 2 cooperatively, we often say, okay, that card didn't happen. Let's pretend that card didn't happen. I don't quite catch myself doing that solo so much because in solo I really don't mind losing. It's really about the puzzle for me, not about the experience. And I think adventure games are more about the experience, and that might happen more over there. But it's an interesting thing to think about.
Yeah, I can relate to both of that because I've definitely done the same thing playing these types of games with Megan, where we say something that didn't happen. And I didn't cheat often in this game, but I think there were a few cases where maybe I was using a rule, or I interpreted a rule to my benefit, whereas maybe it was the incorrect interpretation. But still had a lot of fun with it. Have you played any of the Escape the Blank games? There are a couple different ones.
I don't know it. I haven't seen it, but it looks like my cup of tea. So I'm very interested in it, but I don't know them. But yeah.
Nice. Yeah, that's Escape the Dark Castle for my number 3. What is your number 2 pick?
Yeah, I already mentioned that I'm a fan of another German author, not only Uwe Rosenberg, but also Alexander Pfister. So my number 2 pick would be Maracaibo.
Maracaibo.
Yeah. It's I think you will bring it up on screen, but it's a rondel game. So where you're racing in the Caribbean and you get to do all kinds of actions. It's a typical Alexander Pfister game. You really have a lot of possibilities. It's quite complex without being too heavy. And yeah, it can also be a brain burny game sometimes, but I really, really enjoy it. And what I like about this one particularly is that in a multiplayer game, the group chooses the pace for the game, because it is a rondel game, and if everybody goes one step at a time, the game will take a long time. But that's actually a choice of the group, because if somebody starts racing around the rondel, it's important to catch up, because once there are only 4 rounds of the rondel. So once somebody gets to the final town of the rondel, then the round will end for everyone. So if you're going step by step and somebody races around the rondel, yeah, you won't get to do everything you want. So I think it's very interesting that the group gets to decide the pace, and if everybody decides to go step by step, well, then it is like that. And it also makes it hard to compare the scores, because in a game where you go step by step, the scores will be much higher than in a fast game. But yeah, people compete against each other. And the interesting thing about the solo mode is that the solo mode determines the pace for you, and it's really, really fast. It really races around the rondel. There are actually 2 solo modes. There is the Jeanne solo mode that is in the base game, and there is then the Uprising expansion that brings another solo opponent to Jacques. But it's really interesting how the solo opponent really races around the rondel, and how you have to do your best to catch up and to do everything in the time she gives you. I like it. It's really well done.
That's great to hear. I have only played this one multiplayer, but I had a good experience with it, and I like the idea of that opponent in a solo game putting the pressure on you in a similar way that a human player might put pressure on you if they're racing around this rondel, this one-way action selection track. And I will highlight that too in this game, that I think this is maybe one of the best games. Great Western Trail would be up there as well. Of game into the theme of the game. Like we mentioned Glen More II earlier. I love the kind of the tile selection mechanism in that, but it's fairly abstract. The game doesn't really explain, as far as I know, why you are moving around this track. But in this game, it's very clear. Your ship's sailing around this area, collecting different things and going on little adventures. And it feels very thematic for a game with a lot of Euro-style mechanisms.
Yeah.
Great pick. And number 2, Maracaibo. My number 2 pick is the game Oathsworn Into the Deepwood. This is a big adventure, tactical combat storybook game this is a fancy version of the game. I didn't have all these buildings. They look a little digital here. But this is just a big adventure game. A really, really impressive design. I played a game of this with 3 other people, where we played the full game. We played it's broken. Every session of it is broken into a story part, and then a combat part, a tactical combat part. And tactical combat isn't something that I'm happy to try it. I'm happy to play a game tactically play that tactical combat game once. But after playing that part of it, as much as I enjoyed, or as much as I admired the tactical combat, there are some great choices in it. I found myself much more drawn to the story and all the different scenarios that were to come. And so I decided to take the game home and just play adventure book. The game isn't inherently designed to be played for just the story itself, but it actually worked really well. Where I especially given that the scenarios are each very, very different, and that the story choices you make along the way have major consequences on the story that you get to read through and experience as you play. So I had a great time essentially playing through the entire campaign, doing only the story portions and not the tactical combat. And I had a blast doing that by myself, even though I also had a good time playing it multiplayer.
Yeah. I know the game from seeing it very high in the top 200 People Choices Award. But I haven't played it, so I don't have any experience with it.
Well, that is my number 2, Oathsworn Into the Deepwood. We're down to our number 1 selections here. What is your number 1 pick?
Yeah, my number 1 pick, non-Stonemaier game, would be Dune Imperium. Yeah, It's as you know, it is a great game multiplayer, but it is also a really, really good solo opponent. It puts pressure on you, but it plays quickly. It actually you play against two opponents. So in playing solo, you're playing against two opponents, but the turns are very quick. They play by a deck of cards, but you can also, if you're into that, you can use the app from Direwolf. They have an app that also assists you in playing solo, and yeah, it's really really great. It's as great solo as it is multiplayer. I really don't have a preference there. I really love the game, and I enjoy it equally solo as multiplayer. Yeah.
So this is one where I have only played it with 3 or 4 players, but I've heard that the 2-player bot is really, really easy to run. Is that the same bot as that you would use in a single-player game?
Yeah, there are a couple of cards that are different. So there are a couple of rule changes. It's not 100% the same, but it's the same principle where you play against one opponent, I guess it is then, and it just gets in the way. It takes up spaces. It takes up spice from the board, but you can really focus on your own game and on your own puzzle. Yeah.
Is combat still a factor in that mode?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. It has been a while since I played it, so I'm trying to remember how it is. But it's really important. It's just like in the multiplayer game. You have to choose at the beginning of a round when the cards are revealed. You have to choose, will I participate in this battle or not? And the cards that you flip, they are multi-purpose. So during the round, during the normal turns, they will determine where the agents of the opponent go to, and during battle, during combat, they will determine the number of swords, the strength they have.
Okay. Well, that's great to hear. This is one that I am, as much as I enjoy it with 3 or 4 players, and that I would enjoy with 2. It's one that because of its length, it doesn't get to the table quite as often as I'd like, and I love the game. And maybe that'll mean that I just start playing the digital version. They did recently put out a full digital version, but it's good to hear that the solo version is so much fun. I definitely might try that in the future. Yeah. Dune Imperium at number 1. I love that. That's been number 1 on many of my various lists. Good to see it on another one here. My number 1 pick is a game that we both know very well. This is me breaking a rule in general for me putting Stonemaier games on this list, but I really couldn't resist this because this game I have played so many times by myself, but also with the feeling that I'm playing against other people. And that is, of course, Rolling Realms, the game that Karel is so heavily involved with now. I have that. It's been on my desk for the last 3 years. So I always have it handy with a bunch of promo realms. We're actually revealing these tomorrow, Karel, the big holiday bundle that we're doing. People are watching this video in the future. So this has happened in the past where we have all these realms out here. But this is a game that I designed specifically for people to play remotely with others. So it's a game designed to have no player interaction, which I think is often seen as a bad thing. But I think there are examples of games, and Rolling Realms is one of them, where it can actually be a huge asset because it means that you can play against people simultaneously around the world, and you can even play against those people or play against me with the recorded videos at any time that you want. You can go back to a video 2 years ago of me doing a live play, and you can play a game of Rolling Realms against me and see how you do. And I think you can kind of have that feeling that you're playing against someone else. It's a game that I play every couple of weeks where I jump on a live stream and I play a round of it. And I have so much fun trying to solve the puzzle. And even though I'm not even using, there is a solo mode in the box. I am not using that mode. I'm just playing this game by myself and having a blast doing it. I'm up to, you said 300 plays. My live plays are up to 59 at this point, but there are also many, many other plays, plays with other people and playtests. But speaking of the choir here, I know you enjoy this game too, or you wouldn't be so involved with it. I'm so grateful that you have been. But is there anything you'd like to share about this game in terms of multiplayer and solo play?
Well, I was going to say I haven't played it multiplayer a lot, but that's not true because I have played against you on videos. And the funny thing is, I actually logged that in my BG stats app too, as I played against Jamey. So you're my opponent there. So yeah, I really enjoy it. I play it mostly solo. I have played it a couple of times multiplayer in person, but not so many times. But people know I am involved in that game, and so sometimes people ask, "Yeah, bring that game of yours." And so that's how I brought people into it multiplayer. But I really enjoy it playing by myself or playing against the webcam, and yeah, it has determined the better part of my life the last 3 years. So yeah, it's always on my mind.
I guess for context too, for people who don't know, I won't tell this full story of the game, but one of the reasons that Karel is so involved is that the initial box of the game came with 11 realms, each of which were kind of inspired by a key element of Stonemaier games. But we realized after going to print with it that we didn't have to limit it to Stonemaier games. And so we started reaching out to, at the time it was just me, I was reaching out to other publishers. Karel came on a few months later, and we just started picking games that we really enjoyed and reaching out to those publishers and saying, hey, we love your game. We'd love to feature it in Rolling Realms and design a realm based on that game. And that's how we've ended up expanding it so much to games like Stonemaier games. We have those, but then here's like Skoventyr, which we talked about today, Boon Lake. So we have all these realms that are based off of other games. And it's been, for a while, I was kind of the primary designer of many of these realms, but we have many fan designers now who have designed the initial designs for some of these realms. And Karel has also designed many of them at this point, where he's taken a core idea of one of these games and distilled it down to just a few lines of text and a single image. And it still gives you kind of the feel of that game on a single card, which I think is pretty amazing.
That in itself is also a solo puzzle for me. You could say that I'm playing the meta game of Rolling Realms because getting to work on a new realm is also a fun puzzle for me. I sometimes I haven't played the game it's based on, so then I start playing how to play videos and reading the rule books and then just finding that one element that should go into the distilling of the realm. I really love the design puzzle as well. Yeah.
If anyone else is curious about that, or anyone is interested in dabbling in game design, I think Rolling Realms is a great platform to dabble in. Take a game that you love and design a realm for it, and try to work on. I think it's a good exercise for cutting and streamlining because you can only fit so much text on these cards.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is my number one. I know it's a Stonemaier game, but it is really one that has brought me so much joy and so much unexpected joy. I did not expect to play it, live stream it 59 times and counting. And I really love doing that. And I've also loved playing it with other people.
Yeah.
Well, Karel, it's been wonderful to talk to you today about this topic of multiplayer games that play great solo. Any closing thoughts before we sign off?
I hope I got to get some people to try solo. Playing solo is not something that people do when they have no friends. It's just a fun puzzle, and I hope more people can start enjoying those solo modes because they are great.
And I'll go back to what I said earlier about campaign games. For anyone watching right now who has a campaign game on their shelf that they've been waiting to get a group together for, maybe just get it to your table and play it solo. You might have a great time with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, Karel. I'm curious to see, for anyone watching this, what your favorite multiplayer game is that you also enjoy playing solo, and tell us why. Tell us why it works for both multiplayer and solo. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Thank you so much, Karel. Take care.
Yeah, bye.